Hi, I'm Leather Rock. Welcome to my channel. Walking around Washington, D.C. here, and I'm actually headed to McPherson Square. I was trying to start my turnaround way over there, and that building is the Department of Veterans Affairs, where unfortunately I had a really weird racist experience where there was a guy saw that I was about to try to do my turnaround because I finally found something that I could lean the cell phone up against so I could film. And the guy starts opening up a package of peanuts, and he's standing there with his bicycle, like he's waiting to watch what the heck I was doing. When really, what I'm doing should be his business. And I said, before I started, I said, no, I'm about to film here. I need to do my intro, but I need to wait for you to go. And I waited, and he looked like he wasn't going. And, I don't like to not stand my ground. So, we're there. Anyway, guy would not leave, and I walked past him this way. I think it was like playing a game of chicken. And so he wouldn't leave, so then I tried to go over there. There was another place that I thought I could start my turnaround and start filming. But you know what? The people were exiting out of there. Again, nobody who looked anything like me. And they started talking very loudly, and they didn't have to. And they saw that I was trying to film. So, ooh, these are interesting signs here. Let's take a look. Is your civics knowledge United States American based or King George III pre-1776 Great Britain based? Are you up to the challenge? I'm curious. What do you guys think? You want to see more? What is this? Oh, okay. I'm going to try my best to let you see these. I hope you can see this. This is a buggy contraption. Kind of reminds me if you ever saw The Wizard of Oz, the guy that was the wizard, but he was initially was some guy that was on the road selling snake oil and trinkets and different things. Oh, this guy has a site. It says Clean Honest Government, cleanhonestgov.com. You might want to bookmark this site if you're interested in how our government works, if you're interested in the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I actually know the guy that is inside here. See, United States of America, quiz or be quiz, civics, law, political science, government, criminal justice. This guy knows a lot more than I do. Doing impossible. Look at this, barefoot and homeless to the White House. Clean honest government. The fastest, heaviest, and strongest, most versatile human-powered vehicle. 100% trash recycling, total landfill recovery. Wow. Okay, this here. Can you read this? U.S. Constitution, Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be constructed to deny or construed. The U.S. Constitution, Amendment 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Okay. All right, here. This down here. Government is derived. Their government derives their just powers from the consent of the government. Those are worthless words until we enforce them. Yeah, of course, that argument is being used about the people, the citizens of the District of Columbia, who still have to pay taxes like everybody else, and yet they don't get representation. But the thing is, it wouldn't be fair if they did, because they would only be Democrats, and then we would have an unbalance of power, and you really want to have as much 50-50 Democrats and Republicans. Am I right? Okay. Oh, oh, there's some more. Sorry. Seeking an angel with heart for human-powered tech. Okay, there is an email address here. You might want to check it out. The person I'm about to talk to is this person. His name is Daniel Kingery, and I've known him a few years. He lives out here in Washington, D.C., and he knows things that would take many, many books to explore. He would be great teaching kids. He would be great teaching grown-ups. Most of us probably couldn't pass the citizenship that new citizens, legal citizens, are required to know. This guy knows his stuff. Ooh, this is interesting. Declaration identifies tyranny. The Constitution, Article 3, Section 3, defines treason. Know what is war? Well, I have some opinions about what actions I thought were treasonous, but people seem to get away with it. Oh, okay. Now this is really interesting. Good afternoon, Daniel. You know me, I'm Leather Rock, and I would like to educate my audience. They love our country, but they don't know it. And I've always admired you knew a certain minutiae about how the government works and the sneaky ways it exercises control over it. How most of us, at least I am, feeling very too intimidated to exercise my rights sometimes, or you don't realize what you can do. And there are some organizations that will focus more on giving rights to people who aren't even lawfully in this country. But what about us? Why don't we have more rights than sneak over? So, how long have you been out here doing this and educating people? I would imagine that might be the primary goal for doing this.
Primary reason, purpose, trying to educate people what our rights are and limited powers of our government. And we all basically have attended the same indoctrination camps that we call school. Doesn't matter whether it's public, private, college, university, etc. They all teach the same thing that the government once taught. We are still living under King George III British rule in this country. The War of 1776 was supposed to end there. I know I sound crazy when I say that we're still living under King George III British rule, but when you look at the fact that the United States Supreme Court uses precedents that dates back prior to the Revolutionary War of 1776 to make their decisions. Well, King George III did it. Great Britain did it. So, since Great Britain denied jury trials and criminal prosecutions for what they call petty criminal prosecutions, they do that still today because they did it in Great Britain before we were the country. The Constitution tells us in Article Amendment 6 that in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy their right to a speedy public trial by an impartial jury. 1785 definitions tell us that the accused in any criminal prosecution cannot waive their right to a jury trial, no matter how minor it is. A jury trial is supposed to decide the outcome of every criminal prosecution. You're looking a little puzzled
Yeah,
because that goes contrary to what the government wants us to believe.
yeah,
When you look up the definition or the purpose behind the jury, back before this country became a country, the purpose behind the jury was to find the government's power. And according to the Constitution, the judicial system or the judicial branch is supposed to try the law first and then try the facts. How do you try the law? The law is supposed to be made according to Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. Every law is supposed to be made in pursuant of the U.S. Constitution. Any law that violates the U.S. Constitution is null and void. It is not supposed to be enforced, and we, the people, are not supposed to obey it because it violates our rights. Let's take a couple of ones that generally affect the homeless people and can affect anybody if the police officer or the government decides to enforce them on particular anybody. Sleeping in public. That law can be enforced against anybody. Generally, and most popularly enforced against homeless people. The question is, do you have the right to sleep? Do you? The Constitution doesn't say anything about sleeping, so when people talk about constitutional rights, I get the impression that they're talking about rights that the Constitution grants to people. The Constitution does not grant to anyone any rights whatsoever. To this, I usually ask, have women and people of color always possessed the rights to vote in the United States? They're shaking your head no. That's the propaganda we've been taught. When you read the respective amendments, it does not grant to women or the people of color the right to vote. It says the right of people of color, etc., race, creed, color, or the right of women, the right to vote shall not be infringed based upon these things. So the amendments are identifying that they've already possessed the right. It's like your camera that you're videotaping it. You own it, right? Yeah, sure, right? Yeah. If I take it from you, whose camera is it? Whose phone is it?
I guess possession is 9/10 of the law.
That's the bullshit we not believe.
Oh.
It's still yours because you own it, simply because I stole it from you. And then prohibiting you from using it does not make it any less yours. And it does not make it any more mine. And that's what the government does with our rights. The government takes our rights from us as if our rights are limited and their powers are unlimited. And then they kind of pass laws that say, oh, yeah, sorry, woman, you can now vote when you've always had the right and they have prohibited you from exercising that right.
Is this kind of what they mean by God-given rights, as opposed to what the government gives us that was not within their power to restrict?
Creator given, however you were given, whatever you
A lot of it, I think, has to do with power and control anyway, and money. And if you don't have a pot to piss in, it's hard to get sympathy from people that can so easily use superficialities or twisted economic things which may or may not have any basis in fact to restrict other people's rights. Look at when it was only landowners that could vote.
the the practice, we're taught the practice of government in this country as if it is correct. We are not taught the design for what this nation is supposed to be and the design for what our government is supposed to be. That is not taught. We have continued as a society to practice the tyranny and despotism that the Declaration has detailed, about 25 or something like that, 35 grievances in the Declaration. We've allowed our government to continue exercising practically every one of them on steroids. 3% T tax in the 1700s. We got a 10% tax on everything in BC, and that's not including the 25% tax on wages and your automobile and everything else, estate taxes. Our government literally has a law that regulates every aspect, pre-birth, post, post death. Pre-birth, the government regulates whether or not a woman can or cannot have an abortion. That is a right retained in the Constitution. It does not adversely affect any other person's rights. And when I say person, I'm not talking about a poor person, because it is going to allow our government to regulate free birth as to whether or not abortion should be allowed or not. Then we have to let the government regulate what people may have going to eat, drink, where she's going to work, what hair she's going to breathe, because that will have an effect on what the health of the fetus is going to be. And then the government will regulate what the male can eat, drink, etc., work, and that sort of stuff, because that environment will affect the health of the sperm.
Everything will be accused of child abuse. You can't very well have that, and you're going to go to jail because you took drugs when you could have possibly got pregnant, even though you might not have.
Yeah.
It's for government control. Excuse me.
So I tell people I can teach you everything you need to know with respect to our rights, government powers, and protecting yourself in an honest court. The unfortunate thing I also have to tell you, on one hand, the way things are supposed to be, and on the other hand, how it's usually practiced.
I was going to ask you if there was any honest sports, but
What's that?
I was going to ask you if there was any honest sports. Look at how
I've
Trump.
been looking for one.
Look at how Trump was railroaded in New York City for things that should have been past the statute of limitations. It's like I thought in this country, unless obviously I don't know how things work. I thought in this country there a crime has to have been committed, and then they look for who done it. But only, or in this country now, they could find a person, decide, okay, we're going to find something to get on it. So you're finding a person first, and then looking if there's something they did, instead of finding out that a terrible crime has been committed, and then okay, who did it, so we can throw the book at it. And they did the opposite with Trump. And I got the feeling if they could do this to a guy with his money, his resources, none of us is safe.
A lot of what has happened in the last 8 years or so has been just political show, and Mr. Trump is part of it. He appears to be trying to make some progress to benefit people.
Yeah.
But he blew his first 4 years.
And he's going to start off as a lame duck again. He only gets 4 years.
A lot of what he's talking about doing, or I shouldn't say one or two things. The birthright citizenship is an executive order.
I hope he could do something about that because they do this between that and the chain migration. Our country is being totally turned into something it wasn't. And I'm sorry, it's not the same. We're far too different than certain aspects of our original founding. And I know that sounds xenophobic, but my God, every other country seems to have some kind of cultural identity, and we don't. And it's like, it makes it hard for some of us to feel that we belong anymore. I really feel that way.
In that aspect, most people ignore the one critical flaw inside that all persons born or naturalized in the United States of America, like, Singapore, to be citizens of the United States of America, the place where they reside. The part that's ignored is the and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, anybody who visits any foreign country is subject to obey the law that comes in that country. The United States of America is good at violating that aspect of things, forcing our own customs and laws on other countries. But anyway, he's got that one right, but he's got a battle in the courts because the judges and various other political whoever that is using our government as a battlefield for the people's rights. So, from the Declaration, which is our most important contract among us, the people, it tells us that governments derive their just power from the consent of government. That says that our rights and our power is unlisted. It is unlimited. Whereas we grant powers to the government, which makes the government finite and listed. Kings don't like that. And our government just changed the names of the offices and the names of the players went from king to president and then from parliament to Congress, but the actions have remained the same. So the question is how to identify whether the government has the authority, the capacity, to do what the government is doing. First of all, you need to get really familiar with the Declaration first, and then get familiar with the Constitution. When you are familiar with the content of those two documents and contracts, because they are, then you will easily be able to identify whether the government's law that they passed violates either of those or not. And if the law violates the Constitution, then we are obligated not to obey it, but to resist.
Ooh.
And that is patriotism. We are to be putting down the resistance. And this is the flip point of the resistance. When the government disobeys the Constitution, they are resisting the lawful authority in this nation, which is us the people by way of the Constitution. They are the rebellion that needs to be put down. They presently are the insurrection and have been the insurrection in this country since 1776. George Washington was one of them. He fought a war, a 3% tea tax, and then fought a war to defend a whiskey tax. No difference. Government's unjust taxation. Doesn't matter whether it's the United States unjust taxation or not.
Don't you think it's interesting how the government made a big deal about January 6th, called it insurrection, while tolerating all those BLM demonstrations and burning of Minneapolis? The taking over, I never heard of such a thing as taking over the police station and chasing the cops out. Didn't that happen in Seattle, Portland, or whatever? Things are happening here in the United States, and yet the J6ers, so many of them, they got caught and put in prison.
There gets to be a lot of political reasons.
There was footage that showed that the cops that were in there, the Capitol Police, lifted their hands over, lifted people over the barricade, which means the people there were not trespassing. If somebody lets you in open your door and says, come on in, hello, I've been invited.
Yeah, it's not trespassing to enter if somebody invites you in.
They try to make it out like we were trying to do something.
Yeah, but if they ask you to leave, then if you don't if it's private property. Most people don't realize that public property is owned by us the people and not the government. The government, ever since the founding of this nation, owns nothing. It is merely the manager, the management corporation of, if you will, of that which we the people own. We own the government buildings, we own the land, everything that we consider public domain is owned by us. National park is owned by us the people. We are supposed to have a government that is fully represented. That means, does it mean that the government is supposed to ask us the people whether whether it can sell all our parts? That's not. The Constitution doesn't allow them to even maintain parks and federal land except for necessary things like armories, military bases, government offices. That's the only things the government is supposed to have.
What do you think the government's primary function is? Is it safe?
No.
Isn't that why we have taxes in the first place? Because we have certain services that people can pay for, like the police and the fire.
That's one of the things that people get wrong. It is not the government's job to make sure we're safe. It's not the government's job to make sure we have good health care, good housing, good food, or any of that stuff. That's our job. The government's job is there to protect our rights. To help us protect our rights, to secure our rights. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted upon mankind, deriving their just power from the consent of the government. So we, the people, cannot legitimately grant to our government any power that does not work can equally protect everyone's rights. Not your rights over mine or my rights over yours. You and I have the exact same list of rights. Being a female, correct? Me being a male. We both have the exact same list of rights. I too have the right to get pregnant and have an abortion. But it's not the government's job to make sure, if I so chose, to do so. So it's not the government's job to pave the way, so to speak, or to pay the way for me to exercise these rights I claim. That's my job. The government's job is just to make sure that I am not unjustly violated. If I want to pay technology to have me carrying time for a probably deliver cesarean section, sort of like they did with what was it, Arnold Schwarzenegger, or whatever they call it. For me, got pregnant. Science fact is not far behind science fiction.
Oh,
So if that was my choice, I have the right to do that. But I don't have the right to ask the government to rob the money from the rest of society who may not want to fund it to pay for it. Our government is doing that with transgender this and transgender.
and even Planned Parenthood, there's some people that are very anti the right to choice, and they don't like the idea of that money going to fund things. I can kind of see it from their standpoint. Even though I remember when Planned Parenthood was just health care, testing for STDs, yes, abortions, yes, contraception,
Preparing you for.
so that you don't actually have to have something. But now they're also apparently prescribing the gender change drugs and stuff. And of course, what I think most people are concerned about is treating children and giving people puberty blockers and things before they're really old enough to realize the ramifications of what they're doing to their bodies. We don't give tattoos. You're not supposed to be under 18 to get a tattoo. You're supposed to.
Smoke under 18.
And can you imagine taking drugs that could potentially make you infertile, could cause irreversible changes in your body, your brain? I mean, it's bad enough we experiment full time with teenagers using drugs, right?
Yeah.
Some of us. But can you imagine those hormones and things?
So
Excuse me. Hold on. My sinuses are so bad.
the issue of abortion, so to speak, birth control. You got Democrats reportedly on one side, Republicans on the other side, and they're both wrong.
I don't know why they can't agree on something as basic and logical as that.
See, they're both wrong. The Democrats tend to support birth control pills to 8-year-olds and that sort of stuff, and condoms to middle school and preschool kids and
And
everything.
tampons in boys' bathrooms, let's not forget that.
Where's the Republicans go? Now, while the child is under the age of 18, so to speak, they are under the political jurisdiction of, if you will, of the parents. Now, the parents are under the jurisdiction of the city, county, state, and the nation within which they reside. A lot of that's getting beyond. But with regard to abortion, it is not the government's job to say whether or not the host who is carrying the fetus can or cannot have an abortion, or whether they must have a live birth or not. It's not the government's job to pay for the live birth, nor to fund the abortion. The government is supposed to be out of it pretty much entirely, with the exception of the medical care for that citizen who is the host of the fetus, to make sure that the medical care is not going to kill the host. The purpose is to kill the fetus in an abortion. People say, well, that's a human life. It's a viable human life right up to the time it's either born alive or born dead. Viable. There's a lot of things in nature that go into that life.
Yeah, I never understood really what the term meant. I thought it just meant it was in the womb long enough that it could survive if it was taken out. If it couldn't, if it's too young to survive being a preemie, then I thought it was not viable. So you see there, I'm not a doctor, folks.
Viable just means possible
Oh, well,
or probable. So once this sperm and the egg,
well, then that's almost right away, it seems.
yeah,
That's really scary, because what if you're all still drinking and stuff?
yeah.
You always hear about social
Well, you look
services.
at some of the past generations where they were drinking, drugging, and everything else. And
Now you
they
can
ended
get
up having some
charges.
pretty good genius kids.
Yeah, but now they're blaming every time somebody has autism. They said, was Grandpa exposed to Agent Orange? What drugs were they doing? Were they doing a bunch of meth and stuff? And we're all basically, a lot of us are guinea pigging those who choose to participate in the gene pool or
The the topic
forget not to.
the topic of genetics for birth control, abortion, pro-choice, pro-life. To me, there's no difference. Pro-life, pro-abortion, pro-choice. Pro-choice says you have the choice to abort or to not. Pro-life, you have the choice of, or pro-life, you are mandated to try to give live birth.
Yeah, that seems like slavery. The whole idea. I am pro-choice. I cannot imagine a world without Roe. The whole idea that any government thinks that it can control a person's bodily autonomy is really terrifying, because it seems to be that now, with the stroke of a Supreme Court decision, women are now, we're vulnerable by the very accident of how we were biologically designed. We are naturally created to be fertile from age 10 to 52 or whatever the hell it is. And if by chance something happens, whether or not it was with our consent, then why should we be forced? And if what if something traumatic? What if we were raped by the ugliest guy in the world? Why should we be forced, enslaved? The whole idea that you're forced to give birth. Sometimes you hear this happen to really young girls. Why can we tell them it's okay? And then people say, "Oh, but abortion is murder." What about enslaving that young or any age life and going through that? That just seems so barbaric to me.
It's one class of citizens trying to control the lives and the rights of another class of citizens.
They're already vulnerable.
Religion is one class of citizens, non-religion another class of citizens. Some religions allow for abortion, some don't.
You know, a lot of religion is all about control. Also, look at it. When you want to make money tax free, start a church. I mean, that's big business, big powerful. It's very powerful.
Goes to government.
Yeah, what happens when they decide to control our bodies?
Yeah. Church goes to government to get them to pass laws that protect the church's agenda.
Yeah.
And then whoever has enough money will then buy the next generation of politicians to fight the church's agenda. And that's what we have become as a society. We are not the Union States on the American continent. We are subjects of the United States of America, the government that is not designed.
You'll feel very united with all the states' rights issue. It's really weird that certain things can be legal in one state and not in another.
See, the Constitution doesn't allow that, neither does the Declaration. The rights, the U.S. Constitution applies to every city, county, state across this nation. It doesn't matter. You cannot have one state that says abortion is legal and another one that says it is not. The Constitution says you can't pass any law restricting that right. The government can only regulate the lives of people who are alive, citizens, and people who visit this country. But they can't regulate the lives of people who visit. They can regulate their leave. They cannot tell somebody in this country they can or cannot have visit this country. They can or cannot have an abortion. Like they cannot access Canada. So if somebody comes here from a country that prohibits abortion, and they come here to have an abortion, this country can't say you cannot have an abortion because you're here, because your country says you can. We are not the enforcers.
That makes Islamic countries really angry. People come here specifically to have certain freedoms, and because of the internet, the people are near where they come from find out about it, and they send people over if they have money and means, and actually go after people. That's why certain religions, like the religion of peace, I don't know. I don't want to say things to offend people, but that's a religion that's really scary. Anybody trying to use religion to control our government? And we see that happen, obviously, with the Values Voters Summit. That anybody who wants to get elected, even people who were never known to be elected.
Say, I'm a Christian.
I go, see, I have this Bible handed down for 4 generations. Even people.
They can hold it right side up or upside down as long as they can hold it and say, this is.
I never remember Trump being overly religious. I love the guy. I always thought he was very cool. Didn't pretend to be some highfalutin. I hang out in church and everything. He was somebody that the common man, even though most of us aren't billionaires, but he was something so much relatable about him. But the fact that in order to get elected to any office, you have to totally talk out both sides of your butt and just ask of these things. I find it's really hard to be. Yeah, how can a person can't be totally honest? Like one time, my mother and I was talking about Mario and Mario here decades ago. Before I realized that I am much more secular than I was raised to be, and the whole idea, she said that she didn't think anybody who admitted they were an atheist could ever get elected to president of the United States because she felt that people would feel that because they were atheists, they didn't feel they had to answer to anybody. And I think that the only way that makes any logical sense is if you believe you can only be good if you believe in the supreme being. I think there are some people who just have ethics about, hello, there's right and there's wrong. If it doesn't feel good to you, don't do it to your neighbor. It should be that easy. And the government, though, seems to forget that when some of the things. Didn't Ronald Reagan famously say, I'm the government, I'm here to help? It's a joke. And look at the harm it does. Look at what happened, what FEMA did in South and North Carolina after those mudslides happened. And they were specifically told that if a person had Trump signs on their property, don't help them. That's disgusting that happened. And there is actual proof. And look, a few heads rolled, not enough.
There's been rumors that Trump, a Republican, is going to use his position and everything else to present the Democrats for a lot of.
Has he ever, though? They even gave him an opening. Is he going to do something to Hillary? And he says, nah, life's too short to be petty like that. He was actually very surprisingly gracious.
Yeah.
People think he is a man without a filter that just talks whatever. And I think he's funny as anything. And the thing is, people don't get the sarcasm. And people were he was being quoted in the media, whenever he would say something like, yes, I'm going to rule the world. Oh, no, he's going to take over. And people took it seriously on MSNBC. Said, oh, no, he's going to.
Just play devil's advocate because I don't believe the other side exists either. Is what happens if he does turn tyrannical, despotic, and decides he wants to rule the world, and then goes back to his phrase where he said, well, I told him I was going to rule the world. That card could be played either way, as just being sarcastic and not being meaningful or anything.
But you know what? He may need to use that like the tariffs to scare some other world leaders. Just do a temporary thing as long as he does a gotcha afterwards, because obviously that would still instill fear of a lot of Americans who are already on edge, maybe without merit. I would like to think, like, for instance, a lot of the immigrant population, they don't realize that the focus is going to be on the worst of the worst. They're not going to be taking your grandma. And one thing I would like to see our government do now, if they are going to be doing mass deportations of bad people, since you're going to be breaking up some households, and you're probably going to have some dog or cats left behind, make sure that they're adopted so they're not thrown into our shelters after you take the parents who maybe they're working in this country and that's what's keeping a roof over the heads of these people and feeding the dogs and cats. Wouldn't you hate it for the cats to be put to shelters just because the owners got deported? let's talk about that. I think that's something. I know we're trying to be cutting from the budget and stuff, and the Doge might not approve. But let's talk about for those people who are worried about, oh, let's be compassionate. Let's not break up families. You
Well,
know,
there's a solution to that.
okay.
Don't do mass deportation.
Keep everybody
No,
here?
no, no, no,
Oh my
no,
God.
no. Don't misquote me.
Uh-oh.
I just said don't do the mass deportations. See, that requires the government to exert a large amount of manpower, a large amount of finance to get people out of this country or here illegally, either enter illegally or overstay illegally in Oregon. How about voluntary mass exodus? We have the
I've heard a few have done that because they see the writing on the wall.
we have the constitutional means by which to reduce illegal immigration and people who are in this country illegally. We have the constitutional means by which to whittle those numbers down to extinction level low. Okay. The two laws that I saw in the book with regard to illegal immigration or overstaying the visa. First offense is 6 months in prison. The second offense, and probably third and after that, is 2 years in prison, up to. So, you do a couple of high-profile examples, make sure it gets international publicity, trials, where you know you have the evidence for a guilty conviction. Somebody's coming across the border, you have the video cameras, border patrol, video cameras coming across the border, GPS location, when they get over the border, bring them immediately to immigration courts that are strategically placed along the border states. A jury pool constantly on call 24 hours a day. Some of them will be day shift, night shift, whatever. So there's always a jury pool to satisfy Amendment 6. Criminal prosecution demands a jury trial. The Constitution authorizes Congress to establish a national rule of naturalization. Or, what was that? The Uniform Code of Immigration and Naturalization. Okay. So, since that is authorized, and the law that was established is in place for illegal immigration and overstaying visas, enforce that law. Then people will say, well, there's tens of millions of people in this country illegally. We don't have enough jail space for all of that. Well, we have jail space for a few dozen. That's all that will take. The people that came across the border illegally got arrested, go to trial, impartial jury. The jury finds them guilty. Now they have 6 months of prison time. Amendment 13 tells us what kind of prison time that is going to be. And this doesn't apply just to illegal immigration. This applies to all criminal activity. Amendment 13 states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States or any place subject to its jurisdiction, except for the punishment of criminal activity for which the person was duly convicted. So Amendment 8 says no cruel and unusual punishment shall exist, but Amendment 13 says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude are cruel and unusual punishment for the punishment of criminal activity if the person was duly convicted. No plea bargains. Plea bargains violates Amendment 5 because it compels a person to be a witness against themselves. By the way, Miss Leather, we've held you in jail here for the past 5 weeks or so, violating all of your constitutional rights that I'm not going to tell you about. But if you just confess to this little piddly thing over here, we'll dismiss everything else and call it time served. Or
People do that all the time when they're not guilty of anything, just to get it over with.
because it's very compelling, because the alternate to that is you're one of those patriots, aren't you?
Because you can't say that you were
You want
under
want that.
duress.
You're insisting on that trial, right? Okay. Well, our courts are really booked, so it might be 6 months and everything else before you get out.
And let me guess, you have to wait.
And you're going to be in jail waiting. So you have the choice of waiting in jail, losing your job, probably after the first 2 or 3 days of being in jail, because you didn't show up, you didn't call in to work.
And for 6 months, you can lose your apartment and everything. If you don't have any
house, your
roommates,
mortgage,
what about
or your
pets?
wife and kids and all that sort of stuff, because you're not providing, you're not paying the bills. So that complete bargain is very compelling to very innocent people to confess to crimes that they didn't commit. Okay? So plea bargaining, any plea bargain can be appealed because they have been compelled, even in court. And I've sat through court and heard the judge say, "Has anybody compelled you to accept this plea bargain?" And I'm going, I've been subject to something. We're conditioned to believe that compelling is taking the rubber hose and beating you, slugging you, and forcing you to sign a confession under maybe not giving you any food or water type of stuff. Or but you can compel somebody with sugar or vinegar.
It's almost like when the cops kicked me off the boardwalk with my guitar. They said you can choose to take your guitar and go home. And I knew damn well it wasn't a choice. But you know what? I also knew that to argue with them would not do me any good.
Yeah.
So I left. And they deprived me of my livelihood and caused me resentment ever since then. So yeah, compulsion. You can choose. There is no choice. It is a compulsion.
You can stand up for your rights and be thrown in jail, or you can just surrender your rights to unjust government and go home. The choices are not likely palatable in either case. Because one, you're being deprived of your rights. In the other, you're still being deprived of your rights, but you're in jail. But it was your choice to go to jail or to stop doing it under threat of tyranny. And that's what they're doing.
That's our government. That's a shame.
It's been our government since approximately at least since 1785.
Can you believe we're coming on 250 years?
What's that?
We're coming on 250 years.
250 years of tyranny and despotism in this country, and we take it as freedom.
I want to ask you something. As somebody who lives in Washington, D.C. now, okay, what do you think we're going to do for 250 years? And how do you think, given our present administration with Trump, that seems like he cares more about our freedoms and our First Amendment? It seems to me, and I'm going to be hopeful on this, that he has our best interests at heart.
If he has our best interests
I
at
think
heart.
he does. He hasn't blown up anybody yet.
I said, if he has our best interests at heart, he'll come over and talk to me, and I can show him how the Constitution may accomplish a lot of what he promised in 2016 and didn't do.
Maybe his people will see this. I don't know. I'm just a small time YouTuber with a few people, but I would like to see you get your eyes and ears to your talent, your expertise. I would like more people to know this stuff. This man knows so much.
With regard to the Constitution and how government is supposed to be in this nation, I challenge anybody, any 13 people against one me, to discuss and debate the Constitution and the Declaration and how government is supposed to be in it.
You ever have any cops in the conversation with them? I ever try to mess with your rights, and how do you deal with them? Because you can't reason with cops. I love it. You can't reason with cops. You try to tell them you think you know your rights, your Constitution, your Bill of Rights. It doesn't usually go well.
I usually end up spending time in jail waiting for a trial. They deny me the jury trial. That is why I always, when in the process of being arrested, resist. I don't fight punch at them. I hold my hands together and make them have to fight to get comfortable. Resisting arrest gets closer to their standards. And eventually, one of the police officers will yank my arm and slap it. That happened when I was arrested the last time out of Pearson Square Park. The police officer said I assaulted them. They refused to file charges on assaulting a police officer because they knew, the prosecutor knew, I was going to demand a jury trial. And they knew that with assaulting a police officer, that is an automatic jury trial. Now, before any of that happened, you had better know whether or not the law they are enforcing is constitutional or not. If you can absolutely prove that the law is unconstitutional, as sleeping or camping, as they charge me eventually. Camping is an unconstitutional law protected by Amendment 9. One of those rights is not enumerated in the Constitution. Amendment 9 covers a lot more territory than Amendment 1. Amendment 1 applies to congressional laws, not to state laws, but city laws. It starts, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion and say the states, whereas the rest of the amendments are generic and apply to all of government. Most people aren't aware of. Fortunately, at least according to all of the state constitutions that I've read, about half of them, they all reflect some part of, or most all of the parts of Amendment 1 within their own state constitution, which then applies to the state government and all the cities, county, and counties. It was kind of a fluke. But Amendment 1 only applies to Congress and the federal government, or not to the states. But the state constitution, when you read the state constitution, it means now you got to get familiar with your state constitution as well. Find out where in your state constitution freedom state cannot regulate religion, freedom of speech, press, assembly, petition, etc., etc. And then use that. That's our ignorance. We the people are the reason why our government is as bad as it has gotten. We have become afraid of losing something to the government if we resist their unjust activities. So, in that fear, we empower the government, not realizing that in our fear we've already lost everything to the government, which at their will pick up their U-Haul truck and come by to your location and pick up everything you got in the garbage truck and all of running, all of red. I am one of those prime examples. Several instances. I was accused of contempt of court violating zoning. What was it? It was a site plan type of thing. They destroyed the audio recorded minutes of the meetings, which was over an hour long, with a paragraph, which heavily favored the town government. As a result of that, contempt of court, I lost the junkyard. Not violating anybody's rights, not polluting the water, not polluting the soil, not polluting the air, and actually picking up trash and everything else and loading it. I lost that while I was sitting in jail. Then, the next time I lost anything major value was when I was traveling in a walking, like a UPS truck. It had 2,500 books, library, a bunch of tools, and everything else. It was also getting unbroken, unsafe, but I kept enough breaks for to be able to stop, and then had to fill it up again. But the police officer, the state trooper, had decided to get a tractor trailer when a normal, ordinary torque truck that all most any pickup truck off the road would work. It would have saved me over $400 going. So there I lost that. Whatever I could pack on my back, that's all I could pack. Didn't have money to put in the gas tank. I was panhandling for that. I've done that crisscross across the country twice, panhandling for money for gas. Then in Virginia Beach, while sitting in jail, waiting for my jury trial, they destroyed a laptop, a 4 terabyte and 1 terabyte. It only left me with the clothes on my back. Then we arrested out of McPherson Square Park. This last time, they kept the other two solar panels, not these two. The other two were slightly smaller.
I was going to admire these. I love solar panels, and I think it's great that you have this. Do you keep them warm?
Oh, yeah.
Are you comfortable here?
Yeah, but I don't use a solar panel for heat right now. I'm working on the bugs and some batteries that I let deteriorate.
Can you get the internet here?
Up in a fan. Yeah.
Oh, okay, but you have to have
Yeah, you gotta get a Wi-Fi connection.
I wish we had more blanketed areas with Wi-Fi signals and stuff. I haven't caught a lot of signals. Some of these parks are wired with Wi-Fi, right? But I remember doing some live
I have no
streams.
idea. All the parts I've been into happen because I check everything that says even if it's secure, I go through and check and punch and see if it does.
I'll be back in 15 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Whether or not it requires a password. Sometimes I'll stumble on one that doesn't require a password, and I use it.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether the government's saying about it, whatever. But anyway, so every once in a while there's Wi-Fi hotspots and that sort of stuff. But I will be upgrading that. But anyway, back to my arrest over there. The other two solar panels, slightly smaller than this, they were like 24 by 48. These are 34 by 60, 54 or something like that. So these are bigger. They also kept, in addition to those solar panels, they kept the battery. They kept $3,000+ worth of tools and wind gear, along with some plywood, steel that I was using to finish it up. Simply because I committed the heinous crime of being asleep, something I have been doing in that park for years. They were emboldened when SCOTUS empowered them by saying they could enforce the unconstitutional no camping.
That caused cities all over America
To start
to
arresting
start
people.
arresting people. $300 fines and Atlantic City if you can't sleep.
And
Excuse me.
so I haven't got any of that back yet. All of the sleeping bags and all of the tools that I have now.
Get your property back?
I only got
evidence.
I got from about here down back, except for what was on the top shelf here. There were 4 black and yellow totes that had a bunch of tools and parts for the human powered vehicle here that I'm working on.
Oh.
That's what this is. It's bolt on the other side. You'll have seen 3 wheels on that side, and there's 3 wheels on this side. Human powered,
So you is it a bicycle or
pedal powered.
okay? Does that power batteries also? While you
Not
do
yet.
it?
I am thinking of putting like a electric backup type of thing for those times when I'm going uphill and that sort of stuff, because this thing is about 1,000 pounds.
Looks like you can hold a lot of stuff though because of the size.
And you'll notice by this plywood, it's 3/4 inch thick. All wood here, 3/4 inch thick.
Ah.
Many times I've been arrested out with using the plastic pipe. The park police and or Secret Service has had too much fun breaking it.
That's sadistic.
Now to break it, they have to use forklifts.
I mean, now you're out in the cold, in the elements.
Anyway, so with that, they haven't got that back. Their video of them, because I was arrested at 1 o'clock or whatever in the morning, and they didn't come by to pick everything up until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I thought maybe some people had stolen it. But their internal internal affairs showed me a video, and I said, yep, all of the stuff they took was from up here and along this side of the human powered vehicle, that I did not get that. Everything that was inside, because we probably didn't know how to open it up or whatever, I got that. Granted, it was all waterlogged, rusted, the electronics and everything else was all left out in the drain. And they're supposed to be keeping this under basically wood. So they have video of the fact that they did get everything, and then they said that it was all loaded in one truck, but two people carrying a piece of steel. One went this way, one went that way. If it's in the same vehicle, why aren't they not both going the same direction? Things like this. Do I expect to get that back? No. That so far was the last arrest where the government has taken things from me. And if I'm arrested out of here, I've already told the police that only there's only one or two reasons I will voluntarily do. That is that they are going to do maintenance, repairing the sidewalk or whatever that's underneath. But I do not intend to move simply because somebody says they're going that there's an event going on. So that would be violating my right to occupy the spot of public land. When I get up and move in my own accord, anybody else can come in and move in here. Stay then as long as they want to. But as long as they're, because the government is charged with doing maintenance, I will be required to move anyway. Because say the blocks of cement underneath me are all broken. They decide, well, we're going to come in tomorrow and repair them. Then I would have to move something to repair them. Then once it's done, I could move back or find another place anyway. Otherwise, simply because the government says I've got to move is not not violating anybody's.
You're not taking up anything. You're not stopping anybody from being able to park.
I wasn't over there either. The sidewalk was completely open on both sides. I was harassing people who went by, and I was picking up trash in the parking lot. And dumping snow around it. That little. People eventually. But yeah, they're unconstitutional law. Everybody in government office can be presidents, Supreme Court judges, members of Congress, take any action, any decision they make in violation of the U.S. Constitution to be undone, repealed, no, by us the people, we stand together to do so. So, with all the interior discussions and everything else, one, our rights were unlisted, unlimited.
Have a good night.
Thank you, too.
You're right.
They are unlisted and unlimited. The government's powers are defined, finite, and written into the Constitution. And that nation's Constitution, the Constitution of the United States of America, applies to states, counties, states, and to the nation's government equally. Which means our right to sleep, Amendment 9, not enumerated in the Constitution, cannot be violated honorably by city, county, or state officials who pass laws that say you can't sleep in public. You can't sleep in your vehicle. Especially if you're parked in an authorized parking space. You pay the meter. Meters, by the way, if they're not equally enforced in all parking spaces. Like 2 parking spaces. Let's say this one's handicapped and this one's for everybody else. Both of them either have to have a parking meter or both of them have to have no parking meter, according to Amendment 5 and equal protection under the law. Both of them allow a vehicle to be parked in that space, whether you're handicapped or not. And if you can get a vehicle to that space, you're paying for gas, you're paying for insurance, you're paying for maintenance on that vehicle. Why can't you put 50 cents per dollar in parking meter? So they exempt disabled people from parking meters, which violates Amendment 15. Now, I don't care whether everybody has a meter or nobody has a meter, but it has to be equal. Now, limited powers. The government. They apply across the board. That's where I think it's like Article 7 or something like that, where it's talking about the Article 4. Article 4 talks about where the every state is supposed to honor the rights, privileges, and immunities of the other states, which means you go from one state to the other, you have the exact rights, the exact privileges and immunities as the people of all of the
And
states.
we know that's not true. The Second Amendment,
That's
look how
not
different the gun laws are in every state.
It is true. It's just not practical.
Try living like Texas in New Jersey. Yeah, that doesn't fly.
See, that's the difference between the practice and the design. The design was that you shouldn't have to know the 20 million laws from this state to that state in order to be able to transact business or to move from one to the other. You shouldn't have to learn an entire new list of laws because your rights and the laws are supposed to be equal. Now, one state may choose not to regulate something that the Constitution does authorize, but they cannot regulate ethically and constitutionally. They cannot regulate something beyond which the Constitution authorizes. And any law with regard to Amendment 2 and the right of the people to keep and bear arms, any law that says what kind of weapon you can and cannot keep and bear, where you can or cannot keep and bear, how you can keep and bear, it's a violation of Amendment 2 in any city, county, state, or across this nation. Amendment 13 that we already talked about, the use of slavery and involuntary servitude for the punishment of crime so long as the person has been duly convicted. If somebody uses a fully automatic machine gun to shoot up a school, punish that person who violated the rights of others with the rest of their natural life in prison doing hard labor 12 to 16 hours a day. That, when enforced properly, will send a signal across the rest of society to think twice before they do it, because if they are found guilty, the same fate awaits them. Thus, with illegal immigration, the first dozen or so people who this is done to with high-profile trials, broadcast internationally, will send the message that crime in the United States, crime in the USA no longer, or whatever, crime in the USA no longer pays, something like that. I had a rhyme somewhere. Uh, so now we don't have to. I hope you're going to edit this and splice this appropriate sections together. I'm cheating back and forth across topics. So now the government does not have to spend very many dollars on deporting mass numbers of people because they will go to their own home country from which they came. Or the government can provide like FEMA camps, if you will, sort of like they did with Ellis Island when people were coming into the country. Okay? So they would report to these stations if they are in the country or have been in the country illegally, even for 20 years. Because if you're going to pardon people for being in the country illegally, the government already has a track record of doing that, and every time they do it, it increases. They have every opportunity to apply for citizenship as everybody else. Why give them special favor simply because they managed to avoid the law for 20 years?
They're being rewarded.
That's right. Law. And then their children who are born here illegally, I'm saying illegally because they were born to people who are not citizens.
So they shouldn't have been here in the first place because the parents should.
Yeah. So the children no longer have that citizenship because Amendment 14 never authorized birthright citizenship to people who are in this country illegally.
Wow.
That's what and subject to the jurisdiction. If you are in the country legally and give birth, then there's an argument that birthright citizenship may apply. Because if the parents aren't a citizen, a child can't get something from the stolen. So the parent comes in trying to get citizenship, the child, something the parents don't have, they cannot rightly pass that on. And nothing in Amendment 14 needs to become illegal. Pass birthright citizenship on to children being becoming illegal. That is rewarding criminal activity.
You hear that, President Trump? I hope the people that know him point into this channel because people need to be educated. And I hope I can do something in a small way to help you get the message out. Thank you for taking the time. I
Get a
was.
little distracted, get on subject.
That's okay. Because you know what? I communicate like that too. People, like you are with Trump, how he goes circular if you hang on with him. Because he is not impaired like some of our people do. If you hang on with him, he'll come around. And of all the people I've been having on my channel, this guy here, I've been waiting to talk to him. This needs to get out. Really great to see you, Daniel. Thank you for being part of my channel. Keep warm.
Well, one of these times we'll have to sit down where you actually have to listen to questions and address each
Yeah,
question.
I'll do it real professional. So, if you ever come to Atlantic City, even though, you know what, my building is just condemned, I don't know where I'm going to be in a couple of months. I'm only going to be here a couple more days, but I will see you again. And we will definitely talk more. Okay, I will see you guys tomorrow from Washington, D.C. on Leather Rock. This is Daniel Kingery. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.